Boa tarde a todos, bem-vindos ao terceiro Escritos Suspeitos. Nós estamos aqui na nossa Conferência Internacional de Abertura e para fazer oficialmente a abertura do nosso evento, convido a professora Carla Portillo para falar.
Boa tarde a todos, é um prazer recebê-los para o nosso terceiro encontro do grupo de pesquisa Escritos Suspeitos, dessa vez modalidade online devido à situação atual do mundo, mas de todo modo é um grande prazer recebê-los e eu gostaria de, em nome do Instituto de Letras, dar as boas-vindas a todos, participantes e espectadores. E vou passar a palavra agora para a professora Cristina Ribas, coorganizadora do evento.
Boa tarde a todos, é um prazer estar participando desse evento que já está em sua terceira edição, né? Tendo os colegas presentes, Pedro, Carla Portillo e a nossa convidada internacional. Então, eu espero realmente que vocês curtam e aproveitem esse evento. Eu estou aqui como coordenadora adjunta do Programa de Pós-Graduação em Letras e Linguística da UERJ. É um prazer estar aqui nessa parceria. Então, agradeço mais uma vez e vamos em frente. Passo novamente a palavra à professora e colega Carla Portillo.
Eu vou apresentar, então, a nossa convidada. Eu vou fazer uma apresentação bilíngue. Em primeiro lugar, eu vou falar em português. É um grande prazer receber aqui a professora doutora Sonia Melchiorre, da Universidade da Tuscia, na Itália, que vai apresentar sua pesquisa sobre ficção criminal e séries televisivas. Vamos em inglês, então. I will now present Professor Sonia Melchiorre. It's a great pleasure to have you here. She is a researcher in the field of crime fiction and TV series. She works with language in TV series. And Sonia, it is an honor and a pleasure to have you here with us.
My pleasure, and thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to see you again, even if not in person, but I'm sure we'll have the opportunity very soon. Thank you, everyone. And okay, tell me when to start. I'm ready for that. And please just give me, just tell me 5 minutes before the 40 minutes allocated. Please tell me when, I have just 5 minutes left so that I can readjust everything for the for conclusions. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. You can start if you want, Professor.
Okay, so first of all, I would like to show you this. I hope you can see this, right, Pedro?
Right.
Okay, here we go.
When I was a child, my planet Krypton was dying. I was sent to Earth to protect my cousin. But my pod got knocked off course, and by the time I got here, my cousin had already grown up and become Superman. To most people, I'm an assistant at Catco Worldwide Media. But in secret, I work with my adoptive sister for the DEO to protect my city from alien life and anyone else that means to cause it harm. I am Supergirl.
So, and this is my tribute to some of the women detectives we will not have the chance to meet here in this presentation. This is just an overview of the few series I have started in more depth, binge watching all the time. As you see, they are mostly from the USA, some are from the UK. UK and France, The Tunnel is a very interesting bilingual TV series, one of my favorites, actually. And then we have The Mysteries of Laura, which is the American version of Los Misterios de Laura, which is in Spanish, and then Los Hombres de Paco in Spanish. Ashpe is the new French crime series, which will be aired also in Italy starting from September. And then we have two of the Italian crime TV series, the most popular. We have Provaci ancora, Prof, and I bastardi di Pizzo Falcone. So this is just to give you an idea of what we are dealing with. As you see, they are all women because it's yes, we are discussing a gender spectrum, but within the female the female group of women detectives I am analyzing here. So this contribution results from an intensive binge watching and binge reading activity, and represents a segment of a more articulated research conducted in recent years, focusing on the development of the figure and the language of the woman sleuth in some television series in English. It is now a given that TV series have gained more and more relevance in recent years, still considered too trivial, in fact, by scholars in the 1980s, being expression of popular culture, thus not deserving critical attention. They started to be seriously investigated only in the 1990s, when the new production model resorted to a more direct involvement of Hollywood scriptwriters, directors, and producers. Two of the most striking examples are represented by the TV show ER, aired from 1994 to 2009, based on Michael Crichton's fictions and co-produced by Crichton and Steven Spielberg. And more recently, as we will see, The Good Wife, aired from 2009 to 2016, a TV series produced by Ridley Scott and his brother Tony, who in 1997 bought Shepperton Film Studios in London, where Alien was shot in 1979. It is my conviction that TV series have come to represent contemporary fiction at its best, finally resulting into a rich blend of discursive practices. Moreover, they have succeeded in engaging the audience into a new communication process, initiating a new cultural revolution, closely resembling the huge success of the circulating libraries in 18th century Europe. Yet, when compared to the traditional focus of stylistic research, telecinematic discourse remains underdescribed. Jennifer Ray, in her interesting study of the dialogues in Star Trek, has stated that the popular media is an appropriate source for the study of sociolinguistic differences through the analysis of the speech of males and females. Starting from this assumption, the present contribution focuses on the language of female investigators and experts in the field of crime detection in recent TV shows, and attempts to demonstrate how these characters reveal cultural changes through their scripted speech acts. The language analysis proposed is mostly based on dialogues and interactions and focuses on idiolects adopted by the female characters object of this investigation, that is, Abishuto and Ziva David in NCIS, Avery Ryan and CSI in CSI Cyber. And then we have Alex in Supergirl, and then we will try to see if we can also get The Good Wife with Kalinda. The representative sample considered includes the interactions taking place in the first 11 seasons of NCIS, 257 episodes, from the introduction of the character of Abishuto to the departure of Ziva David, and the 2 seasons of CSI Cyber. To this, we have to add 7 seasons of The Good Wife and 6 seasons of Supergirl. As to the recent evolution of female sleuths on screen, we must observe that the international audiovisual landscape has changed enormously over the last 2 decades, with TV series becoming a privileged field of investigation over the last of investigation on the part of linguists. Some of them have focused in particular on the relationship between language and the creation of and transmission of cultural values and gender stereotypes, building also on Judith Butler's theory of gender performativity. According to such perspective, it is through language that characters perform their gendered identities, complying with the norms in some cases, resisting them in others. Thus, when female characters in particular resist the norm, that is, refuse the stereotypical role assigned to women in society, their language successfully deconstructs the concept of femininity, celebrating and normalizing variation, giving life, therefore, to new cultural models of femininity. The female characters presented in these discussions are, in fact, not only examples of new women, but also of female experts in the field of criminal investigation who have left their ancillary position. John Skaggs has identified in the flexibility and porosity the most peculiar characteristics of crime fiction, and has maintained that exactly these peculiarities have made the genre particularly eligible for appropriations also by feminists. In his own words, crime fiction has changed almost beyond recognition in recent years. And on television, the female investigator has infiltrated the old boys' crime shows. First with their bodies and later with their voices finally joining the choir, women have produced a radical change in the language patterns of the genre. This intrusion has quite inevitably impacted the production of television shows. Since the late 1960s, in fact, networks had been interested in attracting female audiences. Television, inherently domestic, a home appliance not as glamorous as the big screen, suddenly and quite unexpectedly turned into a useful means of emancipation for women, as observed by Linda Misajewski in her groundbreaking study, Hard-Boiled and High-Heeled, The Woman Detective in Popular Culture, published in 2004. The cultural change created new room in the early 1980s for female characters, and the public was ready to welcome the Americanized version of Agatha Christie's Miss Marple, Miss Fletcher. The heroine of Murder, She Wrote aired from 1984 to 1996. so far the longest-running female sleuth in television history to date. 1982 also witnessed the debut of two important women-centered Lacey and Remington Steele. New models were therefore available for women, both in real life and for television producers in the film industry. Yet, these characters' voices seemed only to replicate the language of their male homologues in successful productions, such as, for example, Kojak or Columbo. But change was just around the corner, and a totally different picture would soon be available to viewers of TV crime fictions in the following decade. In the 1990s, in fact, the woman detective became a popular character both in written fiction, with Patricia Cornwell's and Sue Grafton's bestsellers, and television programs, with memorable female detectives such as Jane Tennyson in Prime Suspect, Rose Phillips in Under Suspicion, Dana Scully in The X-Files, Sam Waters in Profilers, and many, many others. When X-Files debuted on television in 1993, Patricia Cornwell's crime novels were already bestsellers. Dana Scully, the female protagonist, is a doctor as well as an agent, and she has much in common with Patricia Cornwell's doctor-lawyer heroine, Case Garpetta. It is also worth noting that Prime Suspect and Under Suspicion were both created by women writers who were also working for the show. These female sleuths, though still closely resembling their foremothers, were now represented as experts in several fields, as medical examiners and behavioral profilers in force at the FBI. More recently, the dominant trend has been to include women into larger teams of police or forensic investigators, and this also applies to some of the series analyzed in the present work. So let's have a closer look at our characters. NCIS, Naval Criminal Investigative Service, running from 2003, has been one of the most watched series of the last 2 decades. It was created by Donald Belisario and Don McGill and premiered on CBS Channel on the 23rd of September 2003. Originally a spin-off business, it has become even more successful than JAG, the legal drama from which it originates. I Screened, the 20th episode of the 8th season of JAG, is considered, as a matter of fact, the backdoor pilot for the crime drama NCIS. It is in NCIS that we find one of the most compelling labs experts in the history of crime fiction, Abby Shooter, on your right in the picture. The presence of young, weird-looking young women and men in crime investigation teams has become a common feature in TV crime fictions. But when Abby Shooter was first introduced in NCIS in 2003, she was a unique character. The reference models for female investigators and forensic experts had been, up to that point, in fact, the beautiful scientists featuring in CSI. Unfortunately, Abby's predecessors' scientific jargon did not differ from their male bosses' idiolects, and this made their voices undistinguishable. Abby Shooter, on the contrary, turns into a very original representative of the female scientist and expert, with her personal idiolect becoming her most distinctive feature, a linguistic peculiarity which is introduced in the very first episode of the series. In it, Abby is asked to examine the results of an autopsy performed on a body and is found in conversation with the other scientist of the team, Dr. Mallard, a medical examiner in force at NCIS. Abby and Ducky, a goth girl and an old Scottish man, 2 outsiders in the team of investigators, are strongly characterized by their peculiar use of English. But if on the one hand, Dr. Mallard's impeccable British English strongly supports and represents the character of the scientist. In Abby's case, her personal idiolect always oscillates between the serious, the humorous, the formal and informal register, the scientific and the juvenile jargon. Abby's very name represents a reference to the fields of computing and forensics, two of her main fields of expertise. Abby, written with a final I, as explained in a conversation between two characters in CSI Cyber, also considered in this contribution, is an acronym standing for Automated Body of Belongings Identification and Belongings Identification. Abby is not a field agent and is often found in conversation with her computers, which she considers her children. These non-intersubjective interactions can be regarded as a dramatic monologue of the kind used in poetry, for example, by Robert Browning, and theatrical performances to indirectly address the audience and have their attention. Among Abby's many specialties, we find references to forensics, genetics, ballistics, weapons, all illustrated to her interlocutors with a language resulting from an interesting mashup of juvenile jargon and precise technical English. An interesting example of an apparently unimportant expertise eventually transformed into more serious activity is also found in the 4th episode of season 1. Abby displays a deep knowledge of online video games in a conversation with Daki, who hasn't got the faintest idea of what she's talking about due to the age gap, and Gibbs, her boss, who often urges Abby to speak a more proper English. Other forms of casual conversation, such as gossip, which Abby hates, and simple chat occurring in Abby's dialogues with Tony DiNozzo, who loves it, are instrumental in providing viewers with more personal information about the two characters, even though in the dialogues with Gibbs, the disfluences of Abby's spoken language and her American juvenile slang tend to be leveled out to ensure clarity for the audience. Her language code is so very personal, it needs to be translated. As for Abby's special relationship with Gibbs, it is signaled by both the presence of vocatives and familiarizers and terms of endearment repeatedly used by the men and by Abby's politeness towards him. The other stunning character presented in the show is Ziva David on your left. Ziva worked with Director Shepard, a woman in charge of the European agency, who created a special position for her at NCIS in order to have Ziva, a Mossad agent, kill her stepbrother Ari, responsible for the death of another character, Special Agent Kate Todd. Sasha Alexander is the actress performing this role, and we will find her again in Rizzoli and Isles as Dr. Isles. Ziva is Israeli, a non-American and outsider whose most salient feature is the way she uses American English. Her disfluences, mistakes, misunderstandings have come to be named by her audience and fans Zivaisms. As you see in the image, she is sort of reworking all the idiomatic expressions of the American English used in this TV series. Being a spy, Ziva also possesses all the necessary skills and expertise one would expect from James Bond and Mata Hari. As she says at one point, espionage just happens to be one of my specialties. Along with a wide knowledge of languages and cultures, she also knows about firearms, explosives, combat, torture, and killing techniques. Television characters are usually relatively stable, and this stability is assessed through the way they speak in their diachronic linguistic variation across seasons or a synchronic variation within the same season. Ziva is an exception to that rule. Her progress and gradual integration in the team are mirrored in her peculiar intellect, which becomes her most appealing feature for the audience. According to Bubel, Since conversation is considered the most important tool in the construction of relationships in real life, it is feasible that the scripted dialogue between characters is the most important site for the co-construction of their interpersonal relationships by the film production team and the overhearing audience. In Ziva's case, too, interpersonal relationships are obviously managed through conversational interaction, in which she displays a knowledge of politics, military, and combat tactics. Through a process of relationship impression formation, the audience viewers are led to understand the characters' utterances in the dialogues in terms of association with or dissociation from the other protagonists in the show. In the end, Ziva's alignment, that is, her orientation towards others and the context, is not exclusively conversational, but also cultural, yet still managed through language performance. And here we come to Avery Ryan. I used to think of this character as a potentially good character gone bad, and we will see why. Avery Ryan's story is briefly told at the beginning of each episode, like a refrain of the general tale. Quote, "My name is Avery Ryan. I was a victim of cybercrime. Like you, I posted on social media, checked my bank account balance online, even kept the confidential files of my psychological practice on my computer. Then I was hacked, and as a result, one of my patients was murdered. My investigation into her death led me to the FBI, where I joined a team of cyber experts to wage a war against a new breed of criminal hiding on the deep web, infiltrating our daily lives in ways we never imagined, faceless, nameless, lurking inside our devices, just a keystroke away." Despite the poor quality of the script, especially when compared to its CSI predecessors, in the first season, Special Agent Avery Ryan retains part of the appeal of the non-stereotypical female detective met in other contemporary crime fictions, and her interactions with other characters seem to reflect this change. Avery's language in season one strongly resembles Abby's and Ziva's in NCIS. With Abby, she obviously shares a knowledge of the cyber world, though their intellects still appear very distant. While Abby's technical speech results from a rich blend of registers and technical jargons, Avery's is always very precise and seldom deviates from a single register, even when her interlocutor changes. On the other hand, she shares with Ziva her expertise as profiler, though the two characters differ quite widely in the actual use of this competence. The generation gap is another recurrent topic in both NCIS and CSI Cyber, though in the latter show it is not as brilliantly dealt with as in the first one. Avery Ryan's expertise in cyber technology is displayed in all her intersubjective interactions with both the young hackers of FBI and the older members of the team, Simon Sifter in season 1 and D.B. Russell in season 2. Unfortunately, Avery seems unable to adapt her language to the different situations, and this results in a certain inconsistency as her older colleagues overtly reveal their unfamiliarity with technical jargon. In season 2, what we get is a totally and disappointingly different female detective character. Avery's geek talks with her young co-workers, her ability to drive a hammer during the pursuit of a target, her excellent qualities as investigator and profiler are gone for good. Furthermore, the story of the woman overcomes that of the professional. When in conversation with her team members, in fact, the expert geek, profiler, and detective almost disappears behind the intruding stereotypical woman victim. A female investigator depicted as a victim, like her homologues, Lieutenant Beth Davis in Stalker, and Agent James Rizzoli in Rizzoli and Isles, to mention only two very recent examples. As to linguistic worth, as a foreign language teacher, I find myself in agreement with Monica Bednarek, who has noticed that no room has been offered so far to a more in-depth analysis of dialogues in TV series to deal with emotional segregation, a topic almost exclusively discussed and understood in all its relevance within the field of ethnic and racial studies. Conversely, this aspect is considered fundamental in the present research study to question the institutionalized process whereby some viewers, namely queer students, are unable to see themselves as emotional equals or as capable of sharing the same human emotions and experiences of the rest of the class. What we have here, this is about stereotypes in Rizzoli and Eyes. So these are the two protagonists. All they talk about are their feelings, their women. And here we also deal with some stereotypes also conveyed by the language of the script. No way, I'm not a hugger. And, Agent Rizzoli resembles a lot the hard-boiled protagonists of the 1980s TV movies. And here we come to the matter I was mentioning, something which is recognized also by queer students. This is one of the few, as we will see, one of the few TV series in which the word lesbian is used instead of gay. But this is just for one reason. This is an exception because this is used in a playful way, as demonstrated by this scene here, which is also playful. At some point, the LGBT community online has started to point at this TV series as as they call it, gay bait, which is something which is trying to attract a different audience, which is not the heteronormative audience we usually find as the typical audience of TV series. For too long, television series have been neglected and deemed unworthy of linguistic study. But in the situation of SLA learning, second language acquisition, television is by now recognized as one of the agents of socialization, able to significantly shape our social linguistic environment and to construct images of social groups and non-standard varieties in the eyes of those viewers who may be unfamiliar with those groups or varieties. As I said, this is done in a very playful way, and this is why we find the word lesbian used here. As some scholars have suggested, TV series have put such varieties on display, infusing them with value, helping media present, promote, and raise awareness among their themes on linguistic diversity. TV dialogue, used as pedagogical tool, also offers the teacher the opportunity of cultural anchoring, thus becoming a virtual space where learners encounter multiple and varied references to culture-specific phenomena, which should represent the most vital part of foreign language classrooms. According to D. Wiley, the TV series are useful because they feature many examples of use and variation in different kinds of words and phraseologies, which could constitute a starting point for teaching students about swear taboo words, their emotional force, their functions, and contexts of appropriate and inappropriate use. As we also see here, this is another gay bait. You recognize here the Dana Scully here with the other protagonist of The Good Wife, which we will meet again later on. As you see here, they are again putting the question in a playful way, and in order to attract a different, not to really present a gender spectrum, not really, but just to be more appealing for a new kind of audience. Okay, and this is Kalinda Sharma, one of my favorite characters ever. As I don't know if you are familiar with The Good Wife and this character, but I'm sure this is worth watching, really worth watching. First of all, because I'm a great fan of Ridley Scott. Second, because this was a really huge hit on TV crime fictions. Kalinda Sharma, you know, the name is has got an assonance with a charm, charming, okay, charmant, something like that, which is charming, means charming. And in fact, she's considered a bisexual character, and she is seen having in relationships with several characters. Apart from her husband and other guys in the show, please notice that the three protagonists of this scenes, of the kissing scenes, where we see Kalinda kissing other women, are all sort of citation from other TV series. The X-Files, Law and Order, and Gossip Girl. So this is one of the main points I want to make here. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to deal with this very interesting character, but just to give you an idea of how I analyzed the language used in this TV series, this is just okay, consider that we have here that The Good Wife was aired for seven seasons, but this is only in 5 occasions, and we only have the variation Dyke in 1 episode. But these are the only occasions on which we find the word lesbian mentioned in the context, and it is usually used as a derogative term or something like a taboo word. What Kalinda, the words and the expressions Kalinda uses in order not to mention the word lesbian are shown in the second part of the table. Kalinda's queerness: I'm private, what if I'm multitasking, I don't distinguish, I like normal, I'm not gay, I'm flexible. So this is Kalinda Sharma. What I define, and here we come to an idea I have started working on recently. What I have come to define the spare me the word strategy, which is the language strategy more or less unconsciously adopted by scriptwriters who, in the awkward attempt to avoid controversy with the broadcast productions, end up erasing LGBT plus identities from the scripts, as clearly demonstrated by a comparison between the number of occurrences of the word gay and the word lesbian in The Good Wife, and the exclusive use of the word gay to refer to lesbian women in Supergirl, as we will see. As clarified by Monica Bednarek, there exist differences between outlets, which means networks, cable, subscription, etc., which impact on language use, especially in relation to the use of particular swear taboo words, which are censored only in network broadcast television. In Supergirl, the word lesbian, though not in itself a taboo word anymore, is still unfortunately considered as such. This self-centering activity on the part of scriptwriters appear therefore as a collateral effect of the recommendation issued by the Statement of Principles of Radio and Television Broadcasters adopted in the US, stating, In selecting program subjects and themes of particular sensitivity, great care should be paid to treatment and presentation so as to avoid the presentations purely for the purpose of sensationalism or to appeal to prurient or morbid curiosity. This is cited in Monica Bennerecht's work. Such recommendation and its collateral effect on script writing proves useful to illustrate how ideological perspectives impact language and produce distortions in relation to the correct perception and understanding of LGBT plus identities. So can you give me the time, please, at this point?
5 minutes right now.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So Alex Danvers, who's the sister of Supergirl, and which we see in black here in the picture, Alex comes out to Kara. This represents a verbal event substantiated in the revelation disclosure of a secret concerning the sexual orientation, if not gender identity, of the protagonist. The dialogues between Alex Danvers and her sisters first, and her mother later on when she comes out to her, are emotionally loaded conversations signaled by expressions of stance and emphatic content. The presence of hesitations, repeats, and incomplete sentences are mostly meant to represent the lack of time for planning the speech, which usually characterizes a natural conversation in such emotional situations, which help the speaker hold the floor and elicit an emotional response on the part of the audience. We need to notice that the word gay, meaning lesbian, in both instances is not uttered by the LGBT plus character, but by other actors. Moreover, the adjectives regular, different, and exceptional function here to finally state that being gay is definitely not an issue. And here we come to the conclusions. Much has been going on since NCIS first premiered on 2003. Sgt. Pepper, Cagney and Lacey, Dana Scully have been finally joined by a huge swarm of women sleuths like, for instance, Jane Rizzoli, Rachel Bailey in Jane and Jane Scott in Bailey and Scott, Sharon Rader in Major Crimes, and Kalinda Sharma in The Good Wife. The woman detective is no longer considered a monolithic category, but the good news is that all these female detectives speak a different language. Thus, they have strongly contributed to the definitive fission of the character of the female detective. Exactly like the atom in a nuclear fission, the woman sleuth has been split into many particles, starting an unstoppable chain reaction and generating new energy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Sonia. Now we can open to questions. Se alguém do público tiver alguma pergunta que queira fazer, a professora Sônia pode fazer tanto em português quanto em inglês. A gente dá um jeito aqui de fazer uma rápida tradução, se necessário, então não precisa ficar com problemas. Enquanto vocês estão aí pensando...
I'm sorry, I don't speak any Portuguese, but if you want to ask in Spanish or French or English and Italian, I'm here, okay? I can understand that.
Yeah, we said that if they want, they can ask in Portuguese and we translate.
Yes, I got that. I got something. Yeah.
So while they are formulating questions, I want to ask about the difference between the American mainstream TV series and the Italian series that...
Okay, obviously we didn't have the time to deal with that, but I have recently presented a couple of years ago, before the pandemic, I presented a contribution at a conference centered on I Bastardi di Pizzo Falcone, which is a very popular TV series. But before that, it's a very the author of the fictions, the written fictions, what we used to call crime novels, crime fictions, had been published for 10 years, or some 10 years, and he has become now very, very popular in Italy. You probably know Commissario Montalbano. Montalbano is the most famous Italian TV series we have had on aired on TV, Italian television. So the Bastardi di Pizzo Falcone is by the same author. The point is that what we are dealing with here is something which needs, according to my opinion, especially in relation to the lesbian love story presented in the text, the author didn't deal with that in the most appropriate way. And at some point, some scenes are can also be considered by foreigners quite offensive, actually. So that's why I'm not dealing with this. When I mention other TV series, because they are a sort of step forward. So I'm only mentioning them in relation when I want to compare the dialogues. So I want to demonstrate, first of all, that the word lesbian is never there, first of all, but not even the word gay. The word gay is hardly mentioned too. So it's just a matter of something going on, widely accepted, and the two lesbians are quite stereotypical characters and so forth. So this is the crime fiction I have been dealing with. But one interesting example is offered by Provaci Ancora Prof, and try it again, Professor. Is the story of this teacher. She's a teacher in high school, if I'm not wrong. And this also was a written fiction and was transmodalized into a TV series. But the author is a woman, Margherita Oggero, and she is a very, very good, writer. Obviously, I haven't dealt with this TV series here because I have been working on LGBT plus TV series or LGBT plus conversations or subjects. So that's why I didn't focus on this one in particular, and I preferred the Bastardi di Pizzo Falcone, which is not the best thing I have watched on the Italian TV series in this direction. So let me think. Other crime fictions always male oriented. That main character is always male and quite hard boiled, stereotypical. The Italian womanizer and blah blah blah, the usual stuff. Nothing really interesting apart from the mechanism of a crime and detection, which works like Shakespeare would do, and it at any time, played by anyone, just because tout se tient, because they are fantastic writers, and and you can reuse these stories, these storylines, and the invariants, as Vladimir Prop would name that. The invariants of crime fiction work by themselves. So even if the stories sometimes are not that good, they are worth studying from my perspective, because I focus my attention on the language they are using, but not just because they are actually as good as UK TV shows or American TV shows. Mind this, it seems to be this new one, the HPE, which is a French production, which is Haute Potentiel Intellectuelle, which will be aired in Italy starting from September, has been one of the most successful TV series in France ever. So I suggest you watch that one if you can, in the original language, or just try to find the subtitles or something like that. So, you know, as I said, one of my favorite, because it's bilingual, and the detective, the female detective and the male detective are both a very interesting characters when dealing with gender stereotypes. The male character in The Tunnel, which is an Anglo-French production. Well, it all starts with a murder in the tunnel of, in between France and England, in the tunnel, the Eurotunnel. And they find Severe, the body, divided into two and positioned right on the line. So the competence of the crime is divided into the French investigator and the British investigator. And the British investigator, she speaks 3 languages fluently. She's a very good actress. And I also recommend watching that one if you like.
Yeah, I'm very interested in that. Sounds very good. Thank you for the answer. Carla, não sei se você quer fazer uma interessante.
I would like to make not exactly a question, but more of a comment, Sonia. I have been systematically working with crime fiction produced by minorities, usually ethnic minorities in the United States, but also elsewhere. And sometimes we say that using the vehicle of crime fiction is, in a sense, a way of giving voice to some communities that otherwise would not be heard. Do you feel, it's not very technical, right? I would just like to know how you feel about it. Do you feel that maybe TV series are following these same steps in terms of giving voice to minorities?
Yes, of course. Yes, of course, because they have the key point here is that they are not just aired on broadcasting stations. So this is the point. So when they are in streaming, a lot of people in the world can watch that. So they are more open. They are opened to a wider audience, so they deal with other topics. Which another TV series, which is not a crime show, I have worked on is The Fosters, which was broadcasted on a cable TV. So. As I said, mainstream TV series broadcasted on TV on a regular basis, they are in a way censored in comparison with these other streaming productions. So when you analyze the kind of language, the topics, the variety of individuals represented in this TV series, you find there a real spectrum of the humankind. So I hope I answered your question. Okay, good.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Ok, então, acho que o pessoal ficou um pouco acanhado de fazer pergunta na conferência em inglês.
Pedro.
Oi.
I'd like to...
Cris, você está aparecendo só a pontinha da sua cabeça na tela.
I don't know what's happening with my microphone.
Pronto.
Oh, yeah, that's it.
Perfeito.
Sorry. Yes.
Hello, Christina. Nice to meet
Hello.
you, first of all.
Nice to
And
meet
thank
you.
you very much for having me. It's been a
Yes,
pleasure.
it's so nice to hear from you. It's a very interesting analysis. Thank you. I'd like to know what kind of different language do you think female detectives talk? I was interested about it. What kind of different?
Well,
and
it's-
yes, what do you prefer, Kalinda Sharma? I'd like to know about your preference.
Kalinda
Yeah.
Sharma. Why Kalinda
Yes.
Sharma? Okay, I'll tell you. Oh, first, let me answer to your first question. Women speak differently. That's it. So that's the point. Only script writers have started listening to them and have started reproducing their own way of talking instead of reproducing the way detectives speak in fictional productions. If you have a male model and you construct a female model on the male model, what you have is a male model in disguise. If you listen to women talking, or if you are really interested in how female characters, well, if you read novels by Bronte, Virginia Woolf, and Jane Austen, okay, Jane Austen is just fine. Let's go back to that. So in conversation, even if you don't know who is talking, you guess, okay? You understand that this is the voice of a man and this is the voice of a woman. And script writers, in my opinion, have just started doing this, not reproducing, but just copying, copying from real or some sort of real, for what that means. Second question, Kalinda Sharma. I love that character and many other women characters in The Good Wife. Not really the protagonist, but my favorite is, it's Kalinda among the many other characters, lawyers, police women, and detectives, and just women, involved in crime as victims, as witnesses, whatever. I think that here we can. I mentioned Ridley Scott for this purpose. Ridley Scott was the director of Alien and Thelma and Louise. Mm-hmm. The Good Wife is his part of the job for the TV series. So this is my opinion. And Kalinda Sharma is an absolute outsider from any perspective, because she doesn't conform. She doesn't even conform to the, as I showed in the table. She is flexible. Mm-hmm. Okay, she's always fluctuating. She's not interested in definitions. She is not even bisexual. I found that definition in order to make you understand that she is found in relationships, for what that means for Kalinda Sharma, in relationships with both and sexual intercourse with both women and men. But she is just there for this kind of relationships. Let me say something. There is an interesting subtext, though, in The Good Wife. And the subtext is that she is sort of, she has strong feelings. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say love, but she is a more friendly thing, like in Thelma Louise with the Alicia, the protagonist. This goes throughout the whole seasons. You know, this kind of strong attachment they have, this resembles very much the attachment we are shown for the first time in Thelma Louise. It's about a female friendship. Women are never represented as enemies in The Good Wife. Even if they are opponents, they are never enemies. They are never offensive against other women. So they have paid a special attention on the language and the script writing. And I think this is due to Mr. Ridley Scott and Tony Scott.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I would like to thank Professor Sonia Melchiorre to accept our invitation to speak in the conference.
My pleasure, absolute pleasure.
And invite, bom, let me talk em português now. E convidar o resto das pessoas para irem para a nossa próxima sessão, que vai começar em mais ou menos uns 15 minutos, né, 2h30, aqui no YouTube mesmo, no mesmo canal. É só clicar ali no link que eu coloquei no chat, tá bom? Os formulários para certificado estão disponíveis na descrição do evento, e queria agradecer a todos por terem participado, terem assistido, e que continuem com a gente nos próximos 3 dias. Obrigado, gente.
Thank you.
Obrigada.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.